To call our agenda meeting to order.
Mr. Wildebohr,
Present.
Miss Barnhart,
Here.
Miss Bradford, Miss Mason,
Present.
Mr. McManus,
Here.
Miss Walker,
Here. Here.
and Miss Bradford,
Okay. And Ms. Craver?
and Miss Craybill.
Run in the other direction.
Sorry. All right, thank you. At this point, we will move on to our next item of business, which is approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Second, Ms. Bradford. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 7-0. You have on the orange sheet our the agenda. We will go through that piece by piece.
Mr. Chair, before we get started on the list on the agenda,
ma'am.
it would be okay to, is it appropriate now to ask if something might be missed?
Sure, absolutely.
I think Mr. McManus had asked for discussion on,
Safety at task, just
yeah,
bring it to everybody's.
and that was seconded by myself.
Yes, I think we did add that, so let's put that under, I do remember that, so
You said
that's probably my
information.
fault. Why don't we put that under new business?
Is there business or is
We want
information?
just information.
Because
Mr.
I was
McMahon?
going to do the committee report for Parks and Gardens,
Mm-hmm.
and it fits, so I was just going to do it under this agenda item.
Okay.
Are we going to vote on anything, sir?
So do
No, I just
we
think
want
we
to put it
need to
under
make sure everybody's
information?
aware that we're aware of
Okay, we'll put it under information then.
what's going on there.
Shouldn't we kind of wait and go down the agenda and then like add
Well-
it in where it should be? Just so we don't get kind of.
Well, no, this is what was missed, and so I asked him if it was appropriate time to ask that question. He said okay.
Okay. So, but we're saying probably more appropriate under information?
I believe so. I don't think it's action
Okay,
item.
so that would be under information, letter J, I believe.
No, because that's consensus, so it'd be D.
I'm sorry?
It'd be D, because it goes on the consensus
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sorry, I
side.
didn't see the top of the next one. I'm sorry, my fault.
No, it's okay.
Oh, for two today,
Trask
Pete.
what?
Safety discussion. I don't know if that what we called it.
Trask. Safety discussion, my fault. All right. Yes, and I do remember you saying that. Ms. Craybill?
So if, I didn't realize this was the time to talk about it, but I had asked 2 times ago about having a discussion on training that the board needs, and you told me it would be on the April agenda, so I don't see it in here anymore.
Right, it's not here. I don't believe that you had received a second on it. I double checked on that. Did you receive a second on that?
Yes, Ms. Walker,
I don't
I'll
believe so.
I'll look for it, because somebody did second it, and you told me that it couldn't go on until you would put it on in April.
Okay.
Our agenda was too busy in March,
Right.
and you would put it on in April, so I'll look for it.
If you don't mind, that'd be great. Okay, let's go step by step down the agenda, and again, if there's anything to discuss or questions, perfect time for questions, and we will go down from there. So, again, we start out with opening the roll call. I don't see, we'll have the work session, that work session, so let's talk about that first. Would we want to start at 5 and go into the late night, or would we rather start at 4, have the work session? Ms. Barnhart, what about 45 minutes, you think?
I think she said 30 minutes,
30 minutes.
45 max.
Okay, so do we want to say 4:30 then? Does 4:30 work for everyone? Or would we rather say 4:15 to be safe?
Let me look on my calendar.
It's like, I'm gonna say,
I would
I
say
need to check my
4,
sitter.
so that we have time to get it all done, and we
Okay.
have time to take a break.
Okay.
I agree.
4 o'clock? Everyone?
Yep.
Everybody go 4 o'clock? Okay, so we'll say 4 o'clock. We will start the meeting at 4 o'clock
Go straight into.
and go right into the work session. We'll have the call to order, roll call, work session, which will take up to 45 minutes. Then we'll come out of there, we'll go into the approval agenda for 5 minutes, invocation, presentation of colors, national anthem. Dr. Faust said he would sing that one for us this time. Pledge of Allegiance. Do I have any volunteers for the Pledge of Allegiance? Who would like to lead that?
I mean,
Ms.
I'll
Walker.
rotate around. I mean,
Okay,
people
Ms.
have done it.
Walker.
Have
Thank
you
you.
done it yet, Hugh? Would you like to lead us? I
Don't care.
don't
Be
think
fine.
he's done it yet.
All right, Mr. McManus. I'll cross it through there and put
Behind.
Mr. McManus.
Thank you.
McManus, all right. Recognitions and introductions. Josh, we had 10 minutes for here.
10 minutes is fine for our piece. Do you have any introductions? So that's sufficient.
10 minutes, okay, very good. Approve the agenda, student voice. Not gonna do one this month? Okay, so let's cross through student voice. All right, no student voice. Superintendent's report. 5 minutes. 5 minutes for my report. Call to audience will be 60 minutes. Strategic plan updates.
I'm going to propose 15 minutes for
15 minutes.
consideration. I'm planning on a 7 to 10 minute presentation and then 6 or 7 minutes for questions. I think that should be sufficient.
Excellent, so 15 minutes for that?
Can I toss something in
Ms.
there
Craybill.
while we're talking about, are we going to get the red, yellow, green?
I'll make sure that there's red, yellow, and green. In the
Okay,
presentation.
and are we going to include in there somewhere any of the new initiatives that we keep coming up with? Example being the 10% reading and the app seed, if we do it, where that would fit in our strategic plan?
So I'll answer. So when you look at the color coding,
Yeah.
so there's no need to actually put in the 10%. That would just show that we are on track.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have by 2027, I think that's the date in there, that we've got to be, so all we're doing is putting in measurements. But it doesn't, I don't know if AppSeed is new, so I'm not sure how to measure. We wouldn't be able to measure that.
But at
so
some
you get
point,
a
we're going to
radar.
measure it, right?
Is it ATSI?
The AppSeed, from the
Yeah.
pre-K, but I don't know how we would measure it because so when you're
finding
looking
it.
at the data, there's so many variables, so we would have to give it at least working, but I don't want us to say that that's dependent on that one because not all of our pre-K centers have it.
Okay.
Unless if we were comparing.
Any other questions about that? If not, demographic and facility utilization study.
15 minutes, and that would include any questions.
15 minutes, all right.
What is that?
It's on the agenda. It's
That's,
on
so the demographic piece is looking at enrollment projections. They'll be forecasted out 5 and 10 years. Facility utilization piece is, ties the demographics into our facilities and our capacities to show, number one, let's make the best use of every available seat we have, but then also looking forward, where do we anticipate growth and how best to, accommodate the growth, meet the growth.
Great.
This is just one step towards, looking at our long-range facility plans and
Okay. Any other questions on that? If not, the 2023-24 recommended budget changes?
I just wanted to share, the only thing from our previous work session that I heard that we need to change from that documentation is that we're going to take a closer look at the athletic stipend schedule, and so that would look different. I didn't hear of any other changes, but I am wondering, should we move that up to new items section, or should we leave it where it is? Just a question for the board.
If we need to vote, we'll have to move it to,
So we won't vote in April, but it will be for information. So if you would like a presentation, then I can do that, or if the work session is sufficient. And so I just asked the board that if we need to pull it out or leave it where it is.
So question for you would be, when you present the stipend changes, if there are they want to do something different with it than what's presented, would we want to put it under new
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if we should put it under new so that there's a discussion versus if you leave it where it is.
Just
I
a
mean, I
presentation.
guess you could still pull it out, but it's
Mm-hmm.
up to the board.
What are your feelings, board members?
If it would require any kind of vote, then probably best to move it out of information.
Okay. All right, and how long do you want to, we'll move it to new business, and how long do you think we would need for that?
Since we've gone through everything today, maybe 30 minutes, I'll just summarize what we talked about in the work session, and then spend maybe a little bit more time on athletics since that's going to change.
Okay, we'll move it to new business and give it 30 minutes. And then finally, now letter C will be the Trask safety discussion. Mr. McManus, how long would you think we would need to?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? All right.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Walker?
I know, Mr. McManus, but I was going to go ahead and put my committee report, unless you would rather me leave that. I feel like the discussion is very similar. I don't think it's going to take longer than 5 minutes, unless anybody has questions about it. I was just going to do my committee report with
From the Parks and Rec?
Parks and Gardens.
Okay. Parks and Gardens, excuse me.
I know, it says Parks and Rec, but it's Parks and Gardens.
Yeah, Parks and Gardens. Okay, 5 minutes. Ms. Bradford?
Backtracking to the new business with Ashley, putting it there. If someone wanted to add an expense, when would that be the time they did that? Would it be at this particular moment, at this meeting?
Yes, any changes that the board would like to make, if that could be communicated at the April meeting, and that would give me time to make the adjustment, so when I bring back for approval of the budget in May, I can already have that included in the budget document.
You might want a couple more minutes, if anyone's going to do it.
If we're anticipating discussion, it might take a little longer than 30 minutes.
Well, why don't we say 30, and if we, these are just rough times anyway. So, 30. Going on to consensus items, are there any questions from board members, Ms.
I was
Craybill?
thinking, when you have the life back, I don't know where, you have that under old business. I'm thinking if we must discuss this again, it should be more under information, based on what you have listed in Simile. It's not expecting us to take a vote. I thought we'd already had the presentation with the recommendation that we don't really necessarily need this. So I'm just wondering why we have to talk about it now for a third time.
Well, I think there's several things that have come to light. One being that the company, we've not got a presentation from the company, so we're going to hear what the device can actually do versus somebody just coming up and saying, you guys should buy this. So that's one piece of it. And two, but I have no problem in moving it to information, that's fine. But we'll move that to information. Unless, well, actually, Ms. Mason brought it up, so I stand corrected, I didn't. You okay to move it to there? Okay.
So can I just ask a question again, too? Is that, is the board supposed to be bringing specific vendors to us, or are the boards supposed to be funneling those through our senior staff? This is kind of like a FAR UV thing, too, is that we as board members are not supposed to even give the impression that we are supporting a specific vendor. So that's what I just keep coming back to. The only person I've heard that's even discussing this is one community member. And if our staff isn't supporting it and think that we don't need it, then why are we supporting LifeVac versus all, any other thing? I'm just worried that we're getting in an area that we don't need to be in.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Does it set a precedent, to follow up what she's saying, does it set a precedent? Now, I've got XYZ vendor that, is my cousin's brother's third person, and now I want them to present. Are we setting a precedent for vendors to come before us?
That's my concern.
In this way?
Yeah.
Instead of going through staff? So, just asking.
Yeah, I mean, Ms. Mason?
We have had presentations from other vendors, correct?
No.
As far as the security during our,
Yes, we
It was
have.
the work, or the
That
doors,
was-
the special day we did.
right, but that was a specific vendor, correct?
Sure, that was.
So it's
And
been
that
done
is
before.
probably not appropriate either. But that's not what we're, I'm just thinking that just because we did it wrong, did it once before, doesn't mean we need to do it again. So I'm just wondering why we have to have this discussion when we've already had Ms. Barnum, who talked to us about these devices being used on our students. Because this is like a giant suction thing that you stick in your nose and pull out boogers, you know, from your little kid. You know, this is like putting this on your face. I mean, a kid is choking, and, you know, are we gonna like lay them on the floor and think that this thing on their face is gonna, you know, suck it out? I don't know. I'm just thinking that if our staff doesn't think it's appropriate, then, and would rather spend money when we're cutting, you know, on like an AED, for example, you know, why would we be
Right.
kind of forcing this again?
We've actually had that discussion. Yes, go ahead.
And along, do we skip over consensus? I don't.
No, well, that's the
No,
next thing we're
I
talking
was
about.
bringing
Yeah.
like that into the information.
Oh, into information,
Yeah,
got you. So
that's what-
along those lines, I would like to know the amount of staff that are already CPR trained at each location. So as far as when we're being presented the information, I think that's part of the piece, because there are measures in place, life-saving tactics. We've actually witnessed two people in the last few years on our staff to do that.
But
So I
this
just
isn't
would-
CPR, this is Heimlich maneuver.
But like, the training that would
First aid.
represent this, as far as, whenever I did my certification of like, emergency response, so I just, I'd like to know that too, if we have numbers for that. I don't know who to look to for that, but.
That would be Ms. Varnum.
Ms. Varnum, that'd be, not right now, but whenever we're discussing it, if you have that on hand, I'd like for us to be made aware of that, because it puts a good perspective as far as if we have, you know, X amount of staff members, that's one out of every 3 classroom teachers that you could,
Right. And Ms. Grable, I definitely hear your point, like in AED, we've had that used, you know, recently, and saved somebody's life, so that's huge, you know, I mean, so, but,
And I didn't mean to commingle those two things.
no,
I was just saying
yeah,
that Miss Bradford was saying the same thing, that if we should not be bringing vendors. We should be bringing vendors to our staff and let them evaluate and decide if it's something that we need to hear.
right. Well, I would agree to a certain extent, but I also think we need to have medical professionals share that with us.
and that's what I was gonna say, if this is a procedural thing, I'd like for us to discuss how we do that, so we can do it appropriately as we move forward, because I don't think there's anything wrong with discussing an anti-choking device, but if there was not proper protocols in place, then let's openly discuss that, so we can all be on the same page of how we move forward to presentations at board meetings or workshops or,
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there, to Ms. Barnes' point, is there a policy or no? Or is a policy needed in this case?
I don't believe that
I'm
there
just
is a
saying, I
policy
mean, because
directly.
typically we go by our policies on things, and if we don't have one, maybe
I
there
don't-
should be a mechanism.
Ms. Grable?
Yeah, so Jason, maybe you can sort of weigh in here a little bit. We have the outskirts of a policy when we're talking about our ethics and our selection of vendors, conflict of interest, you know, that kind of stuff. So if one of us is bringing to light a vendor that we like, that could be construed as a conflict
I
of
think this
interest.
came from a
And-
community member. I don't think this
It
came from.
wasn't me, I don't know these people.
Yeah.
None of us do.
I mean, and if I'm not mistaken, the last report was that we were going to get devices from the hospital, and then that fell through. I don't know that the wording was we didn't need them. And I'm not,
They prioritized
It was
the
a
other
reprioritization,
over
yeah.
the
Yeah.
anti-choking. They prioritized it. They
Right.
didn't say, oh, you don't need it. They
Yeah.
said, well, we're going to put this ahead of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to be honest, if it saves one child's life one time, it's probably well worth any cost we may have. But, Mr. Weber, yeah, I guess the question was asked of you.
Sure, no, I'd be happy to weigh in, board members. Right, there are, you know, policies and statutes around conflicts of interest and ethics. You know, those have to do with when a board member is receiving a direct benefit from a contract. I don't believe any of your policies prohibit vendors from giving presentations or being asked to give presentations. You know, it's not necessarily a standard practice, but that doesn't mean it's not authorized and not allowed. I mean, the legal services proposals RFP would be a great example of when, contractors come in and give presentations as to their services or what they can do. Companies that might be involved in an MOU may come in and present before the board as to the services that they're providing under that MOU. The board could consider, taking a look at its purchasing policies or its board member policies to see if it wanted to make changes in this area, but I'm not aware of any prohibition on it as of right now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We will carry on then with consensus items. The memo of understanding with or MOU of understanding with the University of New England, consideration for bids for Williston Middle School HVAC controls, the New Hanover High School safety and security improvements contract with Nintor, I believe it is.
I have a,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Wildebohr.
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
See, just a clarification, are we choosing from the options, or is it this being presented and we're doing all of them? New Hanover High School student safety and security improvements?
The New Hanover High School item, we solicited proposals from design teams to work with us and our security consultant to take the recommendations from the True North assessment and really kind of fine tune the plan. I want a more comprehensive plan on addressing the needs for New Hanover. Obviously, they have some unique challenges, and I'm not sure that they don't fit the mold of like a lot of the other schools.
And the True North assessment, just for clarification, that's the safety audit that was done? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I imagine most
Walker?
of those are probably, well, these will be attachments for everyone to look at, one, but two, did we have the True North presentation? That's probably on Assembly somewhere as well. Maybe worth just searching it if you wanted to look
Yeah,
at it.
I mean,
when I
and a
looked
lot
at
of
it,
it's in closed session stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, the New Hanover one is just the designer selection.
Okay, so it's just,
There's
so we're not
nothing to
choosing anything,
look
it's
at
just
at
like,
this
this is just
point.
it?
But your approval for the selection is needed if we continue with the firm into the design phase.
Okay.
Ms. Graybill?
Are we supposed to ask questions on, 'cause I read all the memorandums, so I could add, all the consensus items. Are we supposed to wait until you read them all down, or can I
No,
ask?
please stop me, and
Okay.
we'll go piece by piece, because somebody else may have the same
Okay,
question.
so if we can go back to letter A.
Yeah, okay.
The memorandum of understanding with University of New England. Normally, our MOUs are with the agency, the university, but this one seems to name a single person. I don't recall ever reading one where we're naming a person. So let's say that, the lady that's in here, next time I want to do it, do we have to have a whole new memorandum? Because we're adding another person?
This is between New Hanover County
Yeah,
Schools
child
and
nutrition, I'm sorry, yeah.
University of New England. But this program, this MOU is specifically for interns within the child nutrition department.
Right, but it lists the name of one person. That's why I was just asking, because this looks different than the other MOUs that we've gotten.
It's actually, we got this from professional development. This is the MOU they use for teacher interns. So
Okay.
it's the same MOU.
I think your point is we don't usually put the name of the person.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. This seemed different than the other MOUs where it's more broad, that we say UNCW interns, and then we get whoever we get. And this one said University of North Carolina, New England, and we named a person. So I was just wondering if there was something different about a child nutrition intern than there was an educator intern.
Well, and this is Jason, the difference may be that, unlike your MOUs for student interns with, NC State or UNCW, where there could be a number of different student intern candidates in their, teacher prep programs, it may be that this is more of a unique program and that there really is only one student involved. I don't know the specifics of the program, but I've seen some, for example, where it's a principal prep program and there's a specific individual who's going to participate. That person's name might be in the MOU itself because it's about the program, but also, it's really only one individual. That may be the case here, I don't know.
Okay, it's not a showstopper. I was just, it was different, that.
Yeah, I know it's, the MOU's in effect until 2025, and there's only one student that we have participating in it.
So maybe that's why.
So we'd have to add like if somebody else wanted to do it between now and 2025, we would just do an update?
I am looking for where the student's name is actually listed in the MOU.
It's like the first line.
The second page or?
Yeah, the,
And
it's
it's
not.
a last page.
Yeah, it's a whole separate page where the person's name is listed.
Okay, yeah, on the last page,
Yeah.
you're right.
So it's not a showstopper, I was just curious about that.
And also, it could be the program. I mean, sometimes the IHE, the Higher Ed Institute itself, might want the individual to sign because there are some obligations in here that would actually fall on that individual, like compliance with the board's policies or certain other things, student confidentiality. So there could be different factors that go into differences between these types of agreements.
And the answer to your question, if there's another student, we'll do another.
We just
MOU.
add, okay, it's not a big deal.
Okay.
Okay, so then letter B, for the Williston, I was looking at the dates, like where we start, in June, and then we end, it looked like maybe in October. Is there a way to start earlier so that we can get more work done before school starts? Or is that just the way it lays out?
It will be at a point where it's not going to impact the school start.
Okay,
And we'll have the project to a point where, the building HVAC system will be up and running.
okay,
Yeah, we want to get in there as quickly as possible, but the more disruptive things are probably on the front end of this
Okay.
project as opposed to the back end.
okay. And then a question on letter C. Am I correct when I'm reading through it that this is basically just a plan for the plan? That we're not doing any construction for roughly a year? Like we're gonna do RFQs, we're gonna design, we're gonna plan, then we're gonna go out for bid on who's gonna actually do the work.
That's correct.
So this is like a year out-ish?
This is selecting the design team.
Okay. All right, thank you, I'm caught
All
up.
right, okay.
Have we got an E yet? I need to say.
Oh, we're on C, but we'll go to D. Ms. Barnhart.
So I had a question with the process to gain the live feed to law enforcement. That was something that was interesting when I was reading there. So I'd like to know if it is just like a switch of a button or if only certain people are going to have that accessibility to be able to do that in the event of an emergency situation. I know that there has been, unfortunately, some responses from law enforcement that are needed, and I think a live feed would be helpful to safely respond, but I wanted to know the process of what that would look like.
It would only be specific people.
Okay.
So we've been working with Chuck Silverstein, and he would be the one that the law enforcement would be in contact with, and he would be the one giving that authority. It's not what they would use to enter the building. If there was a crisis going on, they would go ahead and just enter the building. This would be used kind of after the fact.
Okay.
And aren't these cameras not only used for like security, but just for other purposes? Like if we were like workers' comp kind of things, or people coming into the, it's not just for, spying on bad guys.
No, it's safety and security.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions on D? If not, we'll go on to E.
I just wanted to add, to let you guys know that the team met, and in the MOU, it says that we will not give out the app seed until the person is in place. We're going to update that because that would delay the students actually getting it in their hands, and the school, actually, the center actually feels like they can control that until we get the person in place. So you're going to see that that's a change. We're going to go ahead and get it in the students' hands.
And that'll be changed for April.
It'll be changed we're going to change it like today or tomorrow. I just didn't want you to see the change if you've already read it, and I didn't let you know. That's it.
Okay. Carrying on the MOU between New Hanover County School Board of Education and NAVSP, we just said. Hendrick gets set, Go grant.
Woohoo.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Craybill?
Do we need, have we had the formal presentation of the check yet? Or do we need to have that at a board meeting, or is that, have they just given it to us? I know
No.
that they might want to have some PR that
Yeah,
we're
I
getting
was
this big old
actually,
check.
I actually thought this was gonna be any information, because basically, you know, based on policy, I think it's 8220, we have to, inform the board. So this is just to give the information, and they're gonna do a big press release in September. But before their check arrives, the real check, needed to inform the board. We're not sure when that will be. But if we can, it probably would be nice to move this to information, since they're giving us $25,000, and we could just, 3 minutes tops, but just to
To info.
share that.
All right, so we'll move item F to information. We'll say 5 minutes to be safe and keep it rounded about. All right, that's great, 25,000. The Head Start cost of living adjustment and quality improvement funds for year. Hello? Any questions on that?
Could
Yes,
you
ma'am?
just refresh me, and all of us, on who's paying for this? Like, is this through Head Start program, they're paying for
Yes, this is
the
just
cost
the
of living and,
Mhm. And this is like
and,
if anybody gets raises and things to that nature. And Ashley, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Ashley, go ahead.
No, you're doing
No,
a
no,
great
go ahead,
job.
go ahead.
It's a federal grant,
Okay.
and they're providing additional funding to cover the cost of
Okay.
living and raises.
so this is just us being aware that they're
Yes.
doing that, okay.
Okay.
Because it will adjust their budget.
Right, okay.
And then H is contracts and purchases report. I is ESSER budget update. Any questions on any of that? Nope.
Did that one just got added, right? Because I just printed this last night, it wasn't on there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And is that what we just covered, or is it something that, ESSER budget update?
Say that again?
We never talked about it.
So it's just an update on our spending levels so that you can see, and I apologize, that wasn't uploaded until this morning, but the report actually shows our progress of where we are. So we're about, with ESSER 2, we have about 10% remaining of those funds, and we are on track to have that spent by June 30th. And we're at about 67% remaining with ESSER 3, and the ESSER 3 grant ends, Dr. Faust had mentioned earlier, September 24th. So I'm going to start giving you just updates periodically, so you know where we are with spending of those funds. And then it also breaks down for you the different areas, the different allowable categories within the ESSER budget, and so you can see the spending levels by category as well.
It should,
Why is that on consent?
I think that might, yeah, that probably needs to go to information then too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is nothing for you to approve. It really is for informational
Information.
purposes.
Okay.
So
And
if
that
you
should
would
be
like to
info,
move
yeah.
it,
Let's move it to
you
info.
can, because there's no approval associated with it.
Let's move that to info too then.
And I will say the same is true for contracts and purchases report. It's just a report for informational purposes, but of course, if you had questions, we could pull it out and
Okay.
have conversations. So I apologize, I should have had that under information.
Okay, so let's move H and I to information. What do you think, about 5 minutes total?
Yeah.
Two of them? Okay. Moving on, any questions or concerns about that? If not, we'll move on to policy consensus. We have A, which is just policy consensus from the policy committee, and then B is the policy amendments from the NCSBA.
And Ms., I wanted to bring to your attention, we added a new tab on our website, so when you can look for policies, under the review tab in the Board of Education, and click on that link so you can see, the public can see what policies are undergoing review. And then it also got brought up to the attention that there needs to be an appointment of the liaison for the NCSBA, so I just wanted to point that out. And after discussing with Jason, it's the chairperson's responsibility to do that, so.
I will have that answer to you by next week.
Thank you.
All
Ms.
right,
Craybill.
so, is there a reason that we have two, that you've got the policies spread out for, like, under A, policy consensus, it's 4 different policies, and then on letter B, there are different ones, so why can't we just put them all together into one?
We can totally come up.
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
think we
let's
need two
combine A
items.
and B.
Yeah,
That's fine.
And just say policy
and then just put
consensus.
all the policies together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a problem with that. We have no old business because we moved it, so we'll move on to,
Kat's been raising her hand for something.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
I'm sorry? Yeah.
There was one policy that we moved on, and after the fact, we got information from the attorney that changed things, and I can't remember which policy it is.
Yes.
It was one that had board NSBS recommendations. I wonder what my little list is. But I wanted to send it back to policy.
Well, we can make that motion.
We'll have to make that
The
motion there
Okay,
on
all
that
right,
day.
meeting.
all right.
Yep, yep.
Well, I'm going to do that when we get there.
Okay.
And I believe it was the counseling.
Counseling.
Yes.
Counseling
Thank
policy.
you so much.
Okay.
3610?
Well, we,
Burned off all those brain cells.
yeah,
while I was
we'll
sick.
do that, make that
Or
motion
3640
that
maybe.
evening, a week from tomorrow. New business, the district-wide book review committee is A, resolution in opposition to HB 219 charter school omnibus is B.
I wanted, if it's okay, to share a little bit of information.
Please do.
So, this resolution was actually shared with us through North Carolina School Board Association last Friday. And so we've included it here if the board is okay with us including this resolution in opposition of House Bill 219. So if you have questions, I'm glad to be able to answer your questions.
And I
Yes,
I
Ms.
can
Crable.
also
Yes, ma'am.
share slides with you. I attended the NCSBA Spring Legal Conference, and this was one of the ones. I was
Okay.
trying to figure out where I could bring that up.
Okay.
But Ashley's going to cover that, so that's good.
Why don't we add a few minutes, because maybe you could also share what you learned.
Yeah, and I can share the slide deck. I mean, you probably already have it anyway, but they gave that to us as one that we should be considering opposing.
Okay.
But we can look it up in the meantime on the link that we have for the House.
And in the board items as an attachment, you actually have the resolution out there that talks through the different things included in that bill for your information.
Okay. Why don't we give that 5 minutes? Is that good? 5 minutes?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I did kind of run through the policy consensus. Again, do we want to use to allot maybe 5 minutes to that in case there is anything we want to pull out? I apologize for not remembering to do that.
Mr. Chair.
District-wide,
Mr. Chair,
yeah,
I
ma'am?
think that's the point of us doing this, is if there's any questions with policy that we need to ask
Right,
questions
right.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's-
Absolutely.
So we shouldn't be, hopefully we won't be pulling.
She's going to pull it out because she
Oh,
wants to
you're
send
pulling
it
that
back.
one out.
I just
Okay.
want to send it back because we
Okay.
got new
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
Just saying in a general sense.
Yeah, in general, yeah. No, that's the consensus, yeah. Ms. Mason, for the district-wide book review committee, how long do you think we should?
I mean, I just wanted to start discussion about it, so
Okay.
I only need like 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay.
Would that be
And
better
is
than
there
the
anything-
information? We're not gonna
Well, there
do a
may be
vote?
some action, I mean, if we decide to go
Okay,
through with
and
Planning on action?
it. I mean, it depends on the discussion.
Is there
Dr.
anything
Faust,
staff needs to bring?
No.
Dr. Faust asked if there was what they need to bring to the table.
I don't think there's anything that you guys need to bring.
Mr. McManus?
Okay, you pushed my button.
Oh, dear.
Because you said it might be some action.
Right, that's
Okay.
Well, I
Would you
just want to
explain?
the discussion.
red flag
Okay,
up.
but discussion and action are two different, that's 180. Would you explain to me, and anyone else that's interested, what you mean by district-wide book review?
Well,
And where your intentions are, because you said it
So-
might be an action, so that means, I apologize, let me finish.
no, you're fine.
So if you'll tell me exactly what the actions might be, meaning you're calling for a vote to do what?
To possibly establish it. Right now, I want to gauge where the board is at. I have just a basic skeleton of it, and I want to kind of get feedback to see where the board is at. I know we've received several community concerns, and so I want to make sure that we're listening to our community members, and
Okay, so what's the design of this committee? Who's involved?
Well, like I
How does
said,
it-
I have the bare bones of it right now.
Okay,
and
would you
that's
explain
what-
that, because that'd be a question I'd like to.
That's fine.
Or
I mean,
share
the
it.
bare bones that I have right now.
Or share the
Yeah, share
information
the
on
information.
Assembly
Yeah,
so
why
we
don't
can
you-
all
why don't you
Yeah,
share?
I can do
digest
Why don't you
it.
share?
And the public can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I can absolutely do that.
Yeah, so you
Ms.
can
Walker
come
had
with
her hand up,
questions.
and then Ms. Craybill.
Sorry.
Did I have my hand up?
You did for a second.
Oh, did I? Oh, well,
I saw it.
I feel like I always have my hand up. No, I think we've clarified some things. If you're going to upload that, this is the
Yeah.
process. Make sure staff is obviously ready for the discussion, because it's going to be a discussion for sure. And I would like the discussion first before any action's done, because, I mean, I think we need time to digest, plus legal, and there's so many layers to this, and we need a chance to talk about what we're already doing as far as the review committees, because I think we have that at a school level.
So would that be something that the
What?
staff could present?
Ms.
Yeah,
Craybill?
so to piggyback on both of those, that's what, I'm just wondering why we're talking about this, because for every person that we might have gotten an email from that says we want to do something in the book banning, book reviewing, we've gotten some that say, why are you doing that, for one. We already have policy 3200 and 3210, so I would ask that when you're giving us your skeleton, that you address how your suggestion is going to be better than the policies we already have, because then the policy committee would need to look at that and discuss what changes are needed. And knowing that policy 2230 would have to be changed if we're adding a new thing in there. And also too, one of the things that Mr. Wildeboer has been very adamant about is that with all of our committees, that we have goals and objectives and meeting times and who's going to be on that committee, how are they going to be selected, which is something that our policy committee is also
Yeah.
working on. So
We'll
does
have
that-
that presentation
So
in
to
April.
establish that, so yeah, I think that should go probably before the discussion on this, so that we make sure that any new policy that comes in. But I'm also just wondering on this, and maybe you're going to address it, but so back in the height of the COVID era, when everybody was complaining and providing feedback on wearing masks and, going back to school, parents need to have choice, and, parents need to decide what's best for their education or their child's education. And here we are trying to be that overriding parent in this. So I'm just having a little bit of, problem with how they're different. So I would hope that you would address those kind of issues. And then NCSBA conference also addressed that. So I'm happy to share a sample one. Pitt County is doing it, so you could go online and look at Pitt County, yourself. And they've got some really interesting things in there that I will share at the meeting. You can tell me where is the good time to share it in.
Okay.
But that is one of the other hot buttons that NCSBA thought that we should all be taking a look at. And then, is it going to include book fairs? Is it include donation of books? And Pitt County does not include that. So just little nuances that like, what are we banning? Classroom books or library books? In books that kids bring in to share with their friends?
I don't recall saying anything about banning.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
when we get talking about
Ms.
it.
Bradford?
I kind of like to down the rhetoric. I don't think anybody here wants to ban a book. I think that, I'm speaking for you because we've not had any conversation, but there are, parents call me almost every single day, and they say, I'm really concerned about this book in my child's classroom. It's not appropriate for their age. It's too sexually explicit for them, or it's too this or too whatever. So the parent's concern is out there. So nobody wants to ban a book, burn it in the central square. That's sort of inflammatory rhetoric. We want to look at age appropriate, and I think we should address it. I'm not willing to do action items, maybe right off the bat.
If we need to move it over to information, I'm fine with that.
I do think that it's definitely a concern in the community. It's a concern for me. As you know, I read from 2 excerpts of books before you when I was a member of the public on the call to audience. It's a concern. So we need to address it, because what we're doing isn't working for the parents. For some of the parents?
For some of the parents. I
Some
think
of the
that's a
parents.
key
So
word
we
that we've
need
got to.
Maybe don't
address
know.
that.
Yeah.
Aren't the whole book, and they're not.
Order, please.
Dr. Faust.
Dr.
I
Faust?
just wanted to share, ouch, what,
Ouch,
Don't
ouch.
our procedure, because I think what's happening in some of those instances, the parents don't know what their rights are
Right.
to those books, and we want to make sure that they understand the rights. So Dawn, can you share what our process is if a parent of a school A comes in to a secondary class and said this is inappropriate, what should happen?
So initially, if it's in the classroom, you have a conversation with the teacher, and talk about the teacher and see if it can be resolved there. If it can't, then there is a formal process for it's with the board policy for the reconsideration procedures for instructional materials. And so the parent fills that form out, gives it to the principal. And then the school, with their MTAC committee, which is their Media Technology Advisory Committee, which is supposed to be made up of representation of the teachers of the school. You can also have a parent on it. And they then follow the process and evaluate that book and then give their findings to the person who created the complaint, the issue. That person then decides whether they agree with it or don't agree with it. If they still kind of feel like the book is not appropriate, they can take it up then to basically the superintendent. And then there is a district level, whole process, and that's what we're in the process now for one. And that consists of people from, I guess, senior staff are on there, instructional resources. There's a whole, group of committees, there's a selection of people. They then do the same process, review the findings that were done at the school level, come up with their own decision, and then that actually is given to the superintendent, that then he then kind of gives to you guys, whether he accepts it or not. And then it can be going up to the board level.
I think I actually have Ms. Barnhart next, and then Ms. Walker.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking over our policies for the different things, and I looked at 3200 in F. In section capital B, lowercase f, to place principles above personal opinion and reason above prejudice in the selection of material of the highest quality in order to encompass a comprehensive collection appropriate for all users. In question to some of our central office staff, I found some discrepancies in between our cross-section of schools, for example, middle school. So we had different middle schools following different protocols for different things, and some that were sectioning off certain areas because they deemed the district the personnel who chose it deemed it inappropriate for lower learners, but all learners had access to it. So I think that these are the kind of things, whenever I initially saw this topic item, that is what is needed for an open discussion as far as district concerned, because while we have our professionals who are saying this is not appropriate for all of our users, but we have accessibility to them all. So this is something that we absolutely have to discuss when we are thinking about protocols in place. It is not me saying what book is going in or out. It is me saying if we are going to be going with protocols, and by Ms. Brinson's own response, that goes against the Association of, I forget, I've talked 5 minutes again. It's not the best practices in the American Library Association and the American Association of School Libraries to do that. And so I think these are things, when we talk about that, that's what I am interested in to look at, to say, if it's not best practices, then why are we utilizing it? I'm not here sitting here ostracizing somebody in different schools, but I'd like to see some consistency. And I think there's been a lot of things as far as policies and procedures that when we overlook and we talk about, that's what we talk about, the differences. And I think when I read this topic, that's what I wanted to bring to the attention, because we should not be having these inconsistencies. So.
Ms. Walker, thank you.
Okay. Well, I was talking to what Ms. Brinson was saying, that this process is parent-centric, which I think we really got to highlight here. It starts at the school level. It starts with the parent initiating it, and that is what we want parent voice that in that regard. I think if we remove any books without that process, that is banning a book. That is removing it from the general people or students at that school without the parent-initiated discussion over it first. And I think to counter that, it's a little unfair to all parents. I know we, like Ms. Craybill said, as a couple people that have been on the board for the last 3 years, we hear from a lot of people, and they have a lot to say, and that's fair. I mean, I don't think any of us want to censor anybody and how they feel. I just feel like this is, I guess, appropriate to have this conversation with what Ms. Barnhart's talking about, that's part of the conversation. But, I mean, some districts are removing books, and I don't necessarily feel like it's our job as 7 people to do that, or less, depending on the committee size. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, yes, sir.
I'm a little concerned, no, I'm a lot concerned. Since we're discussing it and we open a lot of doors here for discussion, several of y'all ran for the board with the understanding that books were going to be an issue. And I'm afraid that we're coming to that point. My issue is parents do have a right to decide what their children read, what classes they take, but that's not a small group. We have 26,000 students. That's how many parents' emails have you received about books? I'm not asking for a definitive, I'm just making that comment. What bothers me is if we're going to ban books because a few parents who have the votes want us to ban them, then we're going to have to ban newspapers who have the same topics every day, all day. We're going to have to ban cell phones, because I can tell you, kids can pull up on a cell phone much more than they can get in a book. It's in color, and it's probably moving. So I'm really bothered that we want to ban books. The easiest way for that is we have the technology to do it. If I don't want my child to read anything that's sexual, then they fill out a form, and the computers in the library, that child cannot check out a book. And that solves the problem. The parents have 2 ways out, but that's the main way. Parents have a right to allow their children to read what they want. And I don't think I am in a position, and I don't think anyone else here, to say, I and my group have decided that you cannot read this book. There'll be people who don't want the Bible before it's over. And once you start banning because of a personal group association, then you've opened the door to ban anything. And I just don't think we need to go there. But obviously we're going. So I'm having my little 10 cents worth here. And you have the votes. Just put it straight out there. And so when you said call to action, I have an idea. We're going to have at least 4 vote for it. And I just hope people will speak up. That's it.
I would like to make it, we had said 5 minutes. I think we probably need more than 5 minutes after we've spent more than 5 minutes now to speak about it. So why don't we say 15 anyway for that? And that will be, do that. We have the
Are we
omnibus.
going to move it to information? Did we decide
Ms.
that?
Mason, she said,
I'm fine with moving it to information.
Let's move it to information.
okay.
Move to information. Okay? Do we have anything else under new business? If not, we'll carry on to committee reports.
I was going to ask, with the resolution in opposition to House Bill 219, I mean, we do have a legislative committee, and so I'm wondering if we should call a meeting and dissect that together prior to coming to the board, as far as, I mean, it's kind of a new committee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but that would be having to remove it from the agenda, so.
Well, I would just push back just a little, only because the full board is going to have to talk about it anyway. I mean, it's going to have to get to us eventually. I think the meeting, was for the board to discuss it and decide. I mean, I don't know how much more time we would need.
Because it's budgetary. The, and I'll share the slides, and you can look at Ashley's too, but it's got budget implications in it that we may need to, that we may not have time to go through the whole legislation, even though that's where it normally would. That's why I asked you guys, did you go?
Oh, I remember
You know.
talking about that, yeah.
And can I ask Ms. Sutton? So that, just briefly, you don't have to go into it, the budget implications are important because it's removing more funds from the school district,
Yeah,
correct?
it will require us to share additional funds with charter schools that we're not currently required to share.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
it's very important.
So I think, unless someone has a big reason, I mean, we would love to run it through legislative committee, excuse me, but I think, because there is a time crunch, we should go ahead and move there. Let's go ahead and add that, just to be safe, let's say 10 minutes.
We
It's
can
just-
send the House bill to you.
Okay, yeah,
I can send
yeah,
that to
if
you.
you wouldn't mind, that'd be awesome. Committee reports, we have the Finance Committee, then we have the Head Start report, the Legislative Committee. Is there any other committees that would like to present or to share?
I was going to do mine with Hugh, so
You
is that
would-
okay to
yeah.
do the Parks and Gardens before with his?
Actually, her part is probably more important than mine.
Well, it's okay. I mean, I don't mind where we put it.
Okay. Well, why don't- since they're very close, why don't
Yeah.
we put them together?
Okay.
Ms. Bradford?
So for finances, I know, has everybody looked at the finance meeting?
It's important too, I think.
Yeah.
people should.
So I don't think we need to have a committee report because we all have seen it. Unless you just.
for the public.
Just, yeah, why don't we recap for the public in case they
Okay, I'm
don't,
just
yeah, if you
trying
don't
to
mind.
save
just-
time, Mr.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't
Sleep.
watch those extra
Yeah.
ones, and they're not going to go back and do it. So a recap is good.
Okay.
Then we have correspondence, announcements, closed session if needed. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Craybill?
Yeah, so I'm back up into the committee reports. So I am a little concerned that we will have not received a after-action report from Legislative Committee prior to two of our Legislative Committee members going and talking with our legislatures and asking for money for initiatives that the board has not approved. So I didn't know where to put that. If we put it on this agenda in April, it will have already passed. You know, the meeting will have already taken place. And I just think that if we're asking for money for a pilot program, that although it sounds great, and I'm not opposing that, we just don't have full board approval for that. All we have is 3 people who attended the meeting and think it's good. So normally, that's what our process, well, there's 3 of you.
Yeah, but I'm not going.
No, I know, I'm not
Okay.
saying, but what comes out of
Oh,
a committee cannot be acted on until the
Right.
whole board
Right.
approves it. You know, so like one board member can't say, Dr. Fausto, do this. You know, one committee can't say, Dr. Fausto, do this. And so I'm just a little concerned that we'll be making asks without full board approval, and we don't have time to do it.
Right, Ms. Walker?
so I would just add that I think typically we don't, if we go talk to people, we're always going to say, this is not the board speaking, this is me as a person in maybe legislative committee, and these are what we're discussing. As long as that's clear, I think it's okay, because, I mean, obviously that's our job, right, to do in legislature, is to have the discussions. But we always, even when we talk to the media, we're like, this is me, this is my opinion, I'm not the spokesperson, we have policies for that. So, I mean, that would only be the only thing I would add to that.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Ms. Mason?
I'm wondering, I have been in contact briefly with the AIG, the Gifted Committee, as well as the EC Committee, and I wanted to just share a little bit of information on there. Can I add those?
Absolutely.
onto there?
Yep. I like that. AIG, what was the second one you said? I'm sorry.
EC.
EC, yeah, absolutely. So we'll have AIG being D and EC being E. E for E.
Mr. Chairman.
I was just going to point out that we're going as board and we're taking the superintendent with us, so we feel like we've got ourselves covered.
You don't have yourself covered because this whole entire board has not approved it.
Right. It
So
has to
your
be a-
superintendent can go and talk, but you can't ask for $1 million that we haven't said, go ahead and ask for. I mean, that's just not, our policy prohibits that.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Mr. Chairman. I had planned to visit just to open dialogue
Right.
on a state level, so this was not an intentional going. When we came together for legislative, I said, what would it look like if we were creating a plan of action? What are some needs of just initial conversation pieces so that we could have some things to think about as we engage in conversation with individuals in the community. Sometimes people are responsive of that. So this is not necessarily, I have one meeting, picking up a conversation about workforce development that we had, talked upon and what that looks like and what some things come down the pipeline. So this is not presenting the plan per se as far as, we're going to ask. I said, that was the bulk of the conversation in legislative because I was curious what you guys are the experts as far as what it looks like to help and to try to do our jobs a little bit better. But
And I'm not disputing that. I think
Okay.
it's great. I'm just trying to keep us in line with our policies. And this,
Okay.
and that is a major, to me, it's a major overstep of policy 2230. You know, that if you're going to do something on behalf of us, we all can go and talk.
Right.
You know, and you'd already had that scheduled. But that's my only point. Is, I mean-
And I'll make sure, and I'll just point this out, I'll make sure that this is not on behalf of, you know, the board of presentation, but this is, when you're talking with people, and you start engaging conversation, okay? I've had conversations about ratios, well, how can we fix them? Well, what does that look like? I mean, and so, the reason why I asked the cost part, right, because that's where it comes in, I said, well, what would that look like? For my knowledge, I wanted to know what that would look like as far as the feasibility and the implications of what that looks like. So I did not put a plan to approve per se, because it was, I can work together an after-action report of whatever, but it was, the concepts would be just to echo what we've already done. We have a resolution that we've adopted for the calendar bill, so that's definitely going to be in the packet that we'll share on behalf of the board, like we've already appropriated that. So there's, so that's where I stand on that, and so I apologize for the confusion. I think it was just excitement to say like, oh, well.
Ms. Wilk.
Ms. Walker?
Can I just pin that up? And I think it was just the process. I don't think there's anything wrong with us as individuals talking. It's just, we always have to be mindful that we are talking as this person and this person on the board, and this is what we like to do, and this is what we see. I think, I guess the danger is, it's just making that disclaimer. I mean, it sounds like a delegation, and that's good. I mean, I'm glad to hear the superintendent's going now, so, I mean, one day I'll get up there. I probably won't, it'll probably be by myself, because, you know, we're different parties or whatever.
No,
But,
we can go together.
one day.
To go often.
That's cool.
She'd go every week if she could.
Don't give her away, don't give her away. No. I mean, I think we're all behind the ideas. I think that's good. The relationships are important. I just think it's a good thing to just clarify, because we don't want to give the idea that this whole board is doing this. But
Yeah, and so.
Until we are.
Until we are, absolutely, until we are.
Right. And that would be the one action item that definitely is on behalf of the board is I'll be sharing the resolution that we've adopted with the senators that we meet with.
For the
okay?
calendar.
For the calendar,
Calendar,
yes.
yes.
And so that is definitely, but like I said, some initial conversations revolved around a lot of different things. I know there's a lot of interest with the workforce development and what that looks like, and, you know, where the obstacles are, and, yeah, those are just.
Yeah, I would love to see that when y'all are, I guess, whatever packet you had, I would love to know.
Well, and I mean, I think
Interesting.
that we have a legislative committee. I mean, I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't report back, you know, at least, you know, at 30,000-foot level on what transpires.
And I know Dr. Faison had put together a presentation of what the pilot program could kind of look like, and then it becomes our job to say, okay, what does this look like for the piece of the money puzzle, you know, if anything. But, you know, right now it's nothing. It's a nothing burger. But it was, if this came to fruition, and, you know, some of the components are being done without any money involved, but if it could be better, those were some suggestions, and so, yeah, I mean, she can maybe share that and upload to that, so we can share this is the bulk of our legislative that we talked about, or?
Now, I guess my question would be, because in an effort to assist and get things in place, so for instance, with our CIS schools, so we had talked about tutors and talked about, you know, the different pay analysis. So in reaching out to some of our legislators and senators, they connected me with others. So we do have a conversation coming up with a group that actually supports tutors, and they also are trained and they do it in other school districts. So do I come back to the board now? So, do I come back to the board and say, hey, can we do this? But sometimes I have to strike when the iron is hot. And because it's going to be April, and I need to call DPI and see if we can get on another grant and see if they'll open up the windows and doors and let us do it. I don't know if they will let us or not, because other school districts, they don't look like us, are in it, but because of some of our connections with our legislature and legislators and and senators, they're saying, hey, call this person. How do we handle, I mean, I know how to handle it, but what is this board, because it's maybe different?
Well, and to that point, Dr. Faust, is, to me, and the rest of the board can concur or not, I see that as your job. You can go and talk to whoever you want and set up whatever programs you want, you bring it back and you guys tell us
If I
the great.
could would,
No, I
yeah.
mean, but
If I
like,
could
you
would.
guys set it up and you tell us, this is our new direction. You know, this is, our strategic plan says this, and this is what we're doing to do it. So I don't see a problem with you ever, and any of your staff, ever doing that.
But I won't present to the General Assembly or anyone.
Yeah.
If I do that, I send you the.
Well, and that's part of our
Send us a
policy
link.
too. If you're gonna have a big meeting, you tell us you're doing it, so we can either go support, or we can watch, or whatever. But so that's not what I have a problem with. It's just, things that we're initiating at the board level, we have more constraints than our superintendent has.
Yeah, they're
That's
legal.
just all that I was bringing up.
Legal ramifications.
Yeah,
and
we
it's
have to-
public. It's what we do as public officials.
And if we don't want to do that, then we change our policy and said, we don't care. You know, the committees can do whatever they want. I mean, we can change that if we don't like it, but right now, that's what we have.
Okay. All right, we are carrying on. That concludes our discussion of our agenda for next week. We do have one more item before going into closed session. The CFCC Board of Trustees, we have the first round, the person fulfilling the 2.5, 3-year term. It has to be done, and please tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Weber, but I believe it's by May 8th is our closing date. We need to have that person, the interviews before then. We have a board meeting on the 2nd. I was going to take a shot at May 5th to do the interviews. Would that give us enough time, Mr. Weber?
You're right, the decision has to be made before May 8th, so if you do it on the 5th, that would be coming down to the wire, but that would get it done.
I think we, right at this point, have 4 candidates, I believe, for that position, so
And this is for the first one, right?
this is for the short, for the.
Funderburk's position.
Yes.
Right, May 8th to replace the position that's gone vacant.
So we have to have it by May 8th, so let's say May 5th. Please check your calendars.
That's a Friday.
That's a Friday.
Did you say?
No, May 5th is.
May
I'm
5th
sorry,
is a Friday.
I'm on the wrong date, sorry.
May 5th is CFCC.
CFCC, if we have,
3rd is.
You know, if I could make a comment.
Yes, please.
The,
coming away.
I think we need to, it's my understanding, we have to let them know. So if we're just deciding and depending on that, I would think that just getting the paperwork together and all this stuff, that might be cutting it just a tad close. That maybe we want to do something more like, that Monday or the Wednesday, so that, we have a chance to review, Crystal has a chance to do whatever Crystal does to work this magic to get it back over to them, and so that we don't miss on a technicality, that we got it in but after 5 o'clock, and so then our person doesn't count.
Well, how about the 3rd? I mean, the 3rd, I know we have a board meeting the night before, but
We have,
April 3rd is.
we have
our-
April 3rd, the 3 of us, for the attorney thing.
April 3rd?
So we could back-to-back them.
I think we're
April
talking
3rd or
May.
May 3rd? We're talking May
That's
3rd.
another one.
May 3rd.
The only thing, I don't know if any of you plan on going to it, but on Wednesday, May the 3rd is when our CDLA program is graduating, and that's at 6 o'clock. So we may not, we want to, I have to be there at 4 to help set up.
That would be your board memo as well.
Yeah, so I would think that if we're going to do it on May 3rd, it needs to be in the morning.
I have no
If
problem
that's
with
possible.
Let's do it. I don't want to start super early, 9 o'clock.
Well, I have in Parks and Gardens at 8. On that day.
11:15.
Just saying, it's 8 o'clock.
It takes about an hour
Yeah.
to do, because they're timed. You're only allowed like 20 minutes per
Let's
person.
see.
I'm only doing stuff on Wednesday.
11 o'clock? 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock
On the 3rd.
on the 3rd.
On May 3rd.
11 a.m.
CFCC, right?
Yeah, but it will be here. CFCC.
Yeah, I just got to keep it separate from attorney in my head.
We good with that, everybody? 11? Double one?
11 o'clock on May the 3rd.
Okay?
Dr. Faust doesn't come.
No, he didn't come.
But Crystal
But I'll just make sure that they were good with that.
So be here.
9 o'clock?
11? 11? Yeah, you be here at 9. You can be here at 9, Mr. McManus.
He's gonna start the coffee.
Yeah, you can interview.
We're going to have to leave 3 spaces so you can get in.
There you go. All right, and I do not have all the documentation anywhere that I see when I'm going into closed session, so,
You want to read it?
yes, I do.
You know what, Pete, you're allowed to say, go into closed session pursuant to what is posted.
May 3rd at 11 o'clock. May
You're
3rd.
allowed to say,
Oh, there it is.
go into closed session pursuant to what is posted. You don't have to read off all the words.
Okay. Oh, but it's so much fun. I would like to entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to, it's gotta be bigger than that. All right,
Josie, that's you.
pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1, 3, and 6 to consider personnel matters and to maintain the confidentiality of personnel records under NCGS 115C-319 through 321 to prevent the disclosure of student educational records and personally identifiable information rendered in confidential under the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act 20 U.S.C. 1232G, and to consult with the board's attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege, including the case captured TH by parent or guardian and AH versus New Hanover County Board of Education. Do I have that motion? Thank you. Do I have a second? Second.
Where can I find the 1232G, sir?
It's right, it's in that parking lot. Okay, we'll leave it alone. All in favor of going closed session, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? If not, it carries 7-0. And just to let you know, we will be coming out of closed session to vote on the personnel report. Ma'am. Okay, I know we do one, but we'll vote on the other. Okay, I'll do it when I'm out of closed session. Okay.
So that's all I'm saying.
Okay. Hold on, we have to vote on the second date too, so. All right, board, we do need to vote on the second date for the CFCC also. So, we're gonna reconvene in open session. We do need a second date. Mr. Weber, is he still on?
Why don't we just do it when we come back out?
I tried to, but we can't change our agenda.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's what was just said. So, do you know the date by
Second
when
date.
the second one needs to be done
Yeah, I
by?
thought we were going to do it on the same day.
Has to be filled by July 1.
Okay, so I see what you're saying, so it's just, and we're not doing it together, we happen to
April 17th, okay. So after April 17th, but before July 1. So please look at your calendars. After, this is for the 4-year, the full position, Mr. Shell's position right now. After April 17th, but before July 1.
Say June or July?
But don't we have to have this in place, them notified by June? I mean, they're getting installed, or they got to notify by June 30th. Just like the same thing, we shouldn't have it come down to the very last second.
Right.
Can we do it in May?
We can do it in May.
Can we do both of them?
Yeah, why can't we do it at the same time?
No.
I thought that's what we were going to do, at the same time.
Because several of the applicants are.
We have to do,
Yeah.
They're double
Yeah.
dipping.
And some people aren't, so.
not everybody's.
How about 1/11, 1/12?
I would
It
take
Well,
takes
that
long.
if it's April 17th.
Can you say they Mr. McManus?
I don't know why we couldn't do it
Mr. Chair?
same, but do you
Yeah.
have time?
Yeah,
11, 12, 10, and 11?
yes,
Mr.
yeah,
Chair?
as long as we don't
Yeah.
start it
Yes,
early.
ma'am.
Sorry, I know
Yes,
we're going
ma'am.
in a frenzy. Crystal, did we advertise for both at the same time? So we can do them the same day?
You're not
So we can
allowed,
do-
no, you have to do, according to
Yeah,
Jason, we
but
have to do them separately.
Separately,
Yeah,
same
we
day.
just talking about 2 different meetings
Yep.
back to back, that'll work.
So we were on May
So that
3rd.
if one doesn't get selected for the first one,
You
but
can go back
wants
for the
to,
second one.
Yeah.
somebody can apply to both,
Right,
and they have to have an
We
interview for
make the
both.
selection right then and there.
we
They
do.
do?
Yeah.
And so they would have to know to stay.
Well, maybe not.
We could just tell them to stay.
They interview for both, because if they,
Make them suffer.
we've got to pick two people.
They have to interview again.
Right.
That's what, yeah.
So
Okay,
we'll do
so,
them both at the same time.
I would like to propose, since we're here that day, why don't we say 11 o'clock for the 3-year position, 12:30 for the 4 o'clock position.
Okay,
11, yes, sir.
why can we not interview, you said they're both applying, I mean, some are applying for both. So we interview all of them, and then we can make a decision on both of them, is that?
I think Jason said we're not
Jason?
allowed to do that.
Not allowed to?
Because some are going to apply for the second one.
These are in closed session.
He's
Jason, you back? No.
No, he got him.
Yes, he is, he's back.
I called him.
He was in the other.
Mr. Weber?
He went to the other room.
Yes.
I'm sorry, we're back in open session. We realized that we needed the second date also. We're discussing, can we interview all the applicants for both positions at the same time? Or do we have to do 2 separate rounds of interviews?
It depends. There's an additional procedural step for the regular position, where there have to be 2 notices posted. There's the initial notice and then an additional notice, I believe 21 days later. So as long as those procedures have been met for the regular position, then yes, you could have interviews for both on the same day.
Done this.
Okay. But can it be just 1 round of interviews, or do we need to do two separate rounds? Like this is.
Several are applying for both positions,
Some
obviously
aren't.
understanding that there's 2 positions.
All right.
Okay, so some of the candidates have said they're interested in both.
Yes.
Right, well then, I mean, you could interview them and decide which one you're gonna place them in, if, you know, they're the person you're going to select.
Okay.
If there's some who only express interest in one, then I guess, you know, that would just dictate, you know, where you'd put them.
Okay.
But we also do have to count out the extra 21 days, and we have to make sure that if we're interviewing on May the 3rd, that we've gotten the extra 21 days in time.
Well, I'm looking at.
Because that's what we ran into last time, is we couldn't interview until the end of May, because we had to get that extra 21 days.
Right, and sorry, I have that, the 21 days is for the vacancy, I apologize. So when you're filling a regular position, so regular appointment to a full 4-year term, there are 2 notices. The second notice is required to be published no less than 15 days prior to the deadline. So it depends on what date you set for the deadline for them to submit resumes.
At
Ms. Bowie?
least 15 days.
The deadline is April the 17th, and so therefore, we're going to re-announce this 4-year vacancy on this Friday,
Okay.
which is the end date for the 3-year vacancy.
Okay.
So when that one closes, then communications will re-announce. So when one ends, the other one will be re-announced, and then we will have satisfied the statute or
So we
the
can do it
policy
on the same
requirement.
Okay.
And so your deadline is April the 17th.
Okay, so
Perfect.
we're good to go. So we can. So we will have the interviews on May 3rd for both positions.
But didn't she just say May 17th is the deadline to submit an application?
April.
Oh, I'm sorry.
April.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's late.
So we will interview for both positions on May 3rd, starting at 11 o'clock. Okay? All right, I'm not going to read that whole thing again, so we'll go back and pursuant to the posted information there, I would entertain a motion to go back into closed session.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you, Ms. Bradford and Ms. Walker. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? If not, we are in closed session. This time for real.
Are you sure? Still taking it off. Are you sure about that?
Please use the restroom on the way in if you need to.
But the discussion is a lot of times more important, and not more fulfilling than just seeing the. So I'll share those. I'm gonna do it with each of you so that I don't get into the 4-person. No, I'm gonna send them each to you separately, like you by yourself, Pat by herself.
Okay.
so that we don't get into the four-person deal.
Yeah, because we don't want to do that.
No.
This is for policy chair. So this is just a stupid one, but it is called Parks and Gardens. And here it's called Parks and Rec. I think Wilmington called it Parks and Rec. We just changed the wording in the policy, that's all.
Yes, I do. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Just make it correct. Not a big deal.
Have two binders. Everybody only supposed to do two.
There you go. There you go. Take them around.
I'm not going to stage revenge part. We're just going to come back out and approve the personnel report. So, I don't want to. What's the next person? I'm waiting on Josh. The lady who's this woman attacks him.
Yeah. Well, and that's all we
People just love to get on social media and personally.
They probably didn't probably go into each of that, your fact sheet. that they
Well,
gave us. It
yes,
was
multiple
slow.
times.
Right, yeah, they could
But
definitely.
I was talking about Josh in this instance.
Yeah, normally I would put something like that on the agenda, but I just got it Friday and I felt like, no, I needed to do something with the information.
Such a headache.
And I didn't, that's not what it was. I was supposed to send that to the county, because I only sent them 40,000.
Well, see, in my budget request, it was 40, because I was only doing the demographic piece. They said, we want you to do the facility utilization piece too.
So I gave her the wrong number. I don't know if she's gonna let me change it now. I gave her 40,000. When Michelle called and asked the question, instead of the 75,000.
I mean, I'm assuming they're gonna want to know from us, or they're willing to, because they're asking.
So I had lunch with her one day this week, so I'll share that information with her and see. Okay, good, good. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Critter cam pictures.
Okay. All right, we're going to welcome everybody back to open session. Knock, 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 knock. We have two items of, left to go. I'm looking over everybody's shoulder, I don't see the other two showing up yet. So, first we have consensus item, personnel, the amended personnel report. Do I hear a motion to accept the amended personnel report?
Make a motion to accept the amended personnel report.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Do I have a second? Second, Ms. Bradford. Any discussion? In case, without any discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That passes 6-0. And our last bit of business is adjournment. Anyone would like to make a motion?
I move we adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion, a second?
Second.
No, somebody, come on now. Second.
trying to be
All in
polite.
favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. We will see you guys next Tuesday, if not before.
No.
Thank you all.
Senate Bill 49.
That's right.
Set the,